One side. And the other side. One side. And the other side. Open and close. Hey, Taisanaki. Kantai. Ryoho. Benchi. Yoko. Hey, breathing in. Ko. Ki. Ko. San. Ki. Ko. Hey, 体をいいさ。Back and front. Back and front. So. Down. So, your knees from the back. Circles one way. And circles the other way. Down. Up. Down. Up. Down. Up. Bend your toes. So, go, breathing in, breathing out. Ki, ko, san, ki, ko. Inside crescents. 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. Outside crescents. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Open your legs and deep squats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now lowering and elbows inside. And down, pivoting one side and pulling forward. So down and down, pivoting the other side. So growing toes, raising head and raising hips. So and spine and your hips one side and the other side. Hey, now put your hands down again, and this time again to open up your hips, be on your toes if you can. You're going to pivot to one side and sit. You're going to come to the middle again, pivot to the other side and sit. So a couple of things with the sitting. Try to make sure that you're kind of in a 90-degree position. So one knee is as down as possible, the other one is as up as possible. So you're in a 90-degree shape. Your ankle and your foot are touching and your chest is extending out. Okay, so you kind of open up in that position. Okay, so you're going to do once again on your hands, on your toes. You're going to open to one side and sit, and in the middle again, open to the other side and sit. It's very important to open first, so you pivot first, and align yourself properly, and then perform your motion, which is the sitting motion. Okay, so in the middle, open up and sit. In the middle, open up and sit. Okay, so slowly working in a dynamic way to open those hips. Not dissimilar to what we will do in a minute with Ushiro Ukemi. Okay, Ushiro Ukemi is another dynamic way that, if performed properly, aims to open your hips a little bit. Okay, so open, sit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Open your legs, elbows down, coming forward and back. Forward, hips up, hips down, hips up, hips down, hips up, hips down, hips back. Hey, all right, let's do it again. Hands down on your toes and opening. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Open your legs, elbows down, going forward, hips up, hips down, hips up, hips down, hips up, hips down, and back. And relax. All right, we're going to do it again, but instead of we're going to be doing the switching side to side of hips, but instead of doing the cobra and the downward dog position, we're going to see if we can find a mountain climber to open up a little bit those hips again. Okay, so in this case, we're going to be once again in our spot. We're going to open. We're going to do one side, our spot, open the other side, our spot, mountain climber, one side, spot, mountain climber, the other side, spot, sitting one side, sitting the other side. Okay, so 4 exercises or 4 motions. Open to one side, open to the other side, mountain climber, mountain climber. Remember, if the mountain climber is a little bit hard, not for you, just open on one side, sit, take your time, slowly open to the other side, sit, take your time, open. If the mountain climber is hard to do in a jumping fashion, okay, just put your knee down and extend forward on one side, put your knee down, extend forward the other side, come up again. Okay, so you don't have to do the mountain climber in a jumping form if it's a motion that is too hard for your hips at this time or your condition. From this position on your toes, put one knee down and extend the leg forward. Put the knee down and extend the leg forward. So let's see how much the hips and the time of the day, are happy doing an exercise. If you can do it more dynamically, good on you, do it more dynamically. Okay, so on your toes and opening one side. 1, 2, mountain climber, 1, mountain climber, 2, opening, 1, opening, 2, climber, 1, neutral, climber, 2, neutral, opening, 1, opening, 2, climber, 1, neutral, climber, 2, neutral, open, 1, open, 2, climber, 1, neutral, climber, 2, neutral, last, opening, 1, opening, 2, climber, 1, neutral, climber, 2, neutral, and relax. Yeah, so it's a little bit deceiving because even the neutral position, or what we are playing at the moment with neutral position, is a position where your core hopefully is engaged, your lower body is engaged, your upper body is engaged. So it's a position that is, even that position, hard to maintain for a significant period of time. So it's a little kind of contracted, planky kind of situation. So even that neutral position hopefully is making your core work, your legs work, and in a dynamic way, opening up. that action. Okay, in Shirokemi, as I say, the same thing. You're basically in a very similar position, maybe not as close as heel and foot touching. You know, your Shirokemi is a little bit more open than that. But the idea is that, especially at the beginning, you use it to open up, you know, your hip. So you take a Shirokemi and you open your hip. You take a Shirokemi and you open your hip, trying to not fly too much the other bum. Okay, try to push it down and open your hip. Okay, so use your Shirokemi also, you know, to warm up your Ukemi, but also to open up those hips as much as possible. Okay, 1, open up, 2, open up, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So all the way up to your knees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Some important exercises to work on opening of our hips. Okay, depending on the space that you have and the availability and the safety around, is obviously our deep squats. You know, it's very important because it tries to work with the entire range of what is available to you. How deep is a deep squat for you? Maybe different to what it is for me. So just the deepest squat tries to find the maximum range of your lowering of your body. Okay. On the way down, for example, although it may look like my squat is deep, my squat is not that deep. I'm actually a little bit high. Some people can go a little bit lower, where their bum almost touches the floor. Mine is still quite high from that. So although this looks like a deep squat, it's not the deepest squat that a human anatomy can take. On the way up, just please remember to not lock your knees. So go all the way up to the point where your hips are up, but your knees never get kind of going backwards and locking. So all the way up, knees are not locked. Okay, so you're gonna go from lock to unlock, lock to unlock. Knees go all the way up, but not getting locked. So your deepest squat, okay, is one action. If you have the space and if you have the safety around, you can do that deep squat now by just creating a jump. So, doing a jump. And jump. That's what we call plyometric kind of exercises a little bit, where you add a motion in addition to your squat. So please try 10 exercises of deep squatting, either static, either on the same spot. Okay. Yeah, remember always to keep your eyes forward, or if you have a tendency to look down, even looking up. So try to avert that tendency. If you have space for, you know, jump into the deep squat, please do it. Okay, so 10 deep squats, either static or in motion, just working on your hips. That's better. All right. So. So that's number one. Really important to kind of have awareness of that. An element that will eventually challenge the squat, either static or vertical, is the position of your hands. Your hands either aiding the motion or getting close to your body, keep the squat stable. The position of your hands in any other part will challenge the squat. So that's why in the kids class, for example, having your hands up like a big kangaroo, and jumping will challenge the squat, because the position of the hands changes a little bit the center of your whole mat. So having your hands in front challenges the squat, having your hands sideways challenges the squat. For people who use weapons, for example, sometimes people use weapons, and then they use, extending the weapon forward, extending the weapon forward, extending the weapon forward. That will challenge the squat and potentially challenge your posture, because if you let the weapon win, your head and your posture will go with the weapon, which is not ideal. So try to keep your posture always, regardless of where the position of the hands are. So you can practice that exercise, hands inside or hands aiding the squat, but kind of keeping them back to your body. That helps you to keep position of body, like your posture. If the hands are in any other space, especially with a weapon, then that will be slightly changed. All right, this time gorillas. Yes, we kind of get accused of doing gorilla Aikido. Let's actually do gorillas, which are great exercise. So hands down, finger by finger, weight moves forward. Okay, so that's the first sensation of the gorillas. Ideally, you can come down as low as possible, finger to finger, shifting your way forward into almost the knees touching the ground. Please do not touch the ground. Okay, so down, shifting way forward, knees almost touch the ground, and then we transfer forward. Down, knees almost touch the ground, transfer forward. Down, knees almost touch the ground, and forward. Down, knees almost touch the ground, forward. Down, hands almost touching the ground, forward. And getting up. So it's quite demanding in two places: at the level of your hips, the level of your legs, 3 places, and at the level of your arms when you are actually transferring your weight forward. You should feel a little bit of the pressure of the weight for a split second, carrying the weight forward. So your arms, your shoulders, okay, your legs, which are constantly engaged, and of course your hips, which are being very much demanded to be down. So let's do it again. Okay, down, nice and slow, down, forward. 1, nice and slow, down, forward. 2, nice and slow, down, forward. 3, nice and slow, down, forward. And so it's good to kind of even have a bit of a little break in between each of the motions. So if you come down here, you enter into your squat until your gorilla walk and open up for a second. And enter again, squat and open up for a second. Enter again, squat, open up for a second. Okay, just opening up for a little bit, after each gorilla squat, so just not one after another, after another, after another. Okay, so again, please, if at any point it starts to get a little bit too tight on your hips, remember to stand up. Do circles on one side, do circles on the other side, okay? Depending on the condition of your hips, you may need to give them a little bit of mobility forward, a little bit of mobility sideways, and so on. So just relax those hips as much as needed, please. Down, forward. So. All right. So, grab your jaw, please, hopefully, or you can grab a jaw or a stick or a wakizashi. The wakizashis are very good because they're not that long and they provide enough, they provide enough length to work with. So if you have a wakizashi, which I should have mine around here, I know where it is. They are a good tool for indoor training because they are not as long as a boken or a yo. They are bigger obviously than a tanto, so they allow for a lot of things. So to have a stick that is like, you know, 2/3 or a little bit less than 2/3 of a jaw, it's a good idea because in the indoor training, because it's enough length to mimic more or less the length of an arm, let's say, you know, from shoulder to hand, and it allows you enough playing area. And if it's a stick, it's better than if it's a boken or a wakizashi, just because the boken or a wakizashi, they always kind of, it's important to respect the shapes and the nature of things, and boken and wakizashi represent a sword, and so the grabbing of the tool, although we know it's a stick, and that's fine to bypass that idea, it's also important to maintain the nature and the purpose of a tool related to that tool. So, you know, grabbing too much, you know, a boken, a jo, or a wakizashi, again, it's a stick, so it doesn't really make any difference. But at some point when we need to use them and to practice with them as a bladed weapon, they may, our subconscious may betray us, you know, because we've been practicing with them just as a stick. So if you can get actually an actual stick, like a jo, but that is not this long, but it's about 2/3 the length of your arm, that's a good size for something to practice. All right, so Nikyo, okay, Nikyo. We cannot practice enough this idea of, you know, opening, changing, opening, changing. It's one of these fine motor skills that are part of our training and that betray us in the worst possible cases. So in the way that we've been practicing this, it has been very much in an almost like a three-step process, like holding, opening, changing, holding, opening, changing, and that's fine to kind of build that the importance of those three moments of the holding, the opening, and the changing eventually has to almost happen in a one motion, which is a little bit more what will happen, you know, when we practice by ourselves. So let's do it in 3 motions, you know, first both sides, left and right, and then we try to see if we can bring it back into 1 motion. So 3 motions: holding, opening, changing, and again holding, opening, changing, and again holding, opening, changing, holding, opening, changing. So just one caveat here, depending on your preference or the way some people even teach it, remember that the change can happen with the palm of the hand. Basically, if you put your hand and rotate the palm of the hand, okay, once again, open, use the palm of your hand and rotate around with the palm of your hand. The second one is using the base of the thumb, okay, open, using the base of the thumb, okay, open, using the base of the thumb, okay, so hopefully that can see opening, using the base of the thumb and rotating around, open, using the base of the thumb. It's almost like there's a tiny little micro step in there, isn't it? You open, you pass the thumb to this side and rotate around it, okay, so you open, pass the thumb to this side and rotate around it. So that's the thumb base rotation or the palm base rotation. Okay, open, palm base. Okay, open, palm base. Open, palm base. So now, which of these two is correct? That is such a fine motor skill that as long as the rotation happens with some level of connection, the important thing the important thing in levels of priorities is control, okay, which implies connection at the level of the elbow where you're applying Nikyo. And then the second important thing is, to a certain extent, connection on the hand that is doing the rotation. So many Asians, isn't it? Variation. So first of all, control at the level of the elbow. That's fundamental, because if that control does not exist and this is jumping, then the hand cannot really do anything. So the first thing is control at the level of the elbow. The second thing is connection, okay, at the level of the hand, ideally. So that connection, as we were saying there, can happen by changing with the palm, or can happen by changing with the thumb, as long as this connection. Sometimes the control here is enough. This hand loses connection and completely turns around and just grabs. And for application purposes, that's perfectly fine. So, if you control, you completely lose connection of this hand, your hand rotates, and then you grab. That's okay. So you control, you open, you lose connection. As long as this is nice and strong and controlled, this hand is reasonably free. So instead of grabbing this way, grabs that way, controls now this. So while that is okay for application purposes, it's good to nourish the connection element. So it's good to nourish the idea of not jumping, boom, boom. Here in Nikyo, it doesn't matter that much, the fact that you jump, because first you are controlling on the elbow, you jump and you come. But on the next two, Sankyo and Jonkyo, the jump will be bigger. And what we try to do is to not jump from an Ikkyo position to a Sankyo position, but maintain connection at all times, for Jonkyo and for, so the more we can start, nourishing our mind that we're not jumping into position is good. So, okay, control, opening, palm, control, opening, passing, thumb. Okay, so now it's up for you to study, which of those two motions of connection you want to maintain. In the worst case scenario, control, release, grab. Control on the elbow, release, grab. But again, my recommendation is to not nourish that habit too much, because in Sankyo and Jonkyo, we try to not jump that much, but maintain connection in the translation. Okay, so we begin with this position, okay, Ikkyo Omote, first control Ikkyo, okay, change your base. Now here is when you do your change, okay, when you open your hand, you change and you apply one more time, okay, so to the side, here, raising up, and Ikkyo with your hips, stepping forward, change your base, open the back hand, change, and apply one more time. Okay, to the side, forward, and Ikkyo. First, change your base. Open the back, hold, and apply. Okay, to the side, enter, and Ikkyo. Apply inside of your triangle. Change your base. Okay, you're controlling now. Back hand opens, changes, enters, and applies. The application, the Oshimai, we want to practice. Let's practice the Oshimai for Ikkyo Omote, okay? Because we are there and because it's important. Remember, Nikyos will always finish, enter. Nikyo will always end up finishing parallel to the ground, so you will end up on the ground. Nikyo, you will control and the arm will remain vertical. Okay, it's very important to not put the arm down in the ground, vertical. And from there, let's move into the Oshimai so we can see how that all works. So, entering, apply inside of your triangle, change base, open the back hand, change, and enter. So apply again. Vertical the arm, step forward, knees down, hips as close as possible to the arm or to the jaw, holding, hugging the whole thing, hugging your own arms, and moving towards your front knee. Okay. So, the other side. Okay. Entering, and Nikyo, inside of your triangle. Control inside of your triangle. Change base. Back arm opens, changes. Controls the elbow. Keep it vertical, stepping forward. Down with both knees. Hugging, moving to the front knee. So, okay, so remember, very important, there will be no arm with your partner that can go as vertical as the jaw. So, but it's a good habit to remember that this jaw is basically as vertical as your spine, okay? Because the next, and as vertical as your spine and as close to your hips as possible. If these two conditions are met, verticality on your spine and connection to your hip, then every inch of motion that you make in the oshimai, in the pinning, is going to be efficiently transferred towards the body of your partner. The more those two conditions get lax, as in the arm is not as straight as possible, but it is sideways, for example, okay, or the more the arm is not connected to your hip, but is further away from your hip, the more wasted energy and wasted time there will be in the transfer of motion, okay? So the two principles is arm as vertical as possible. Once again, this is very difficult because not all ukes, have the flexibility to make this arm to go vertical. In actual fact, most people won't. Most people, you will have to kind of, compromise a little bit and just don't bring their arm completely vertical, but just allow them to bring them up as much as they can. But the idea is to bring it as vertical as possible. And second, if your partner is too far from you, okay, rather than just hanging in there and having this space between you and your partner, and instead of just dragging your partner in towards you, which depending who you're practicing with, maybe that's okay. You can always bring yourselves to your partner, make sure that there is enough connection between you and the arm, and then transfer. So remember, verticality of arm, proximity of body will ensure transfer of motion or transfer of energy in the most efficient way. Okay, so again, enter, control, change base, open back hand, change grip, Nikyo control once again, stepping forward, vertical, close to your arm, grabbing your jaw and moving forward. So to the side, enter, control, change your base, back hand opens, changes into Nikyo, down, controls, steps forward, inside, and grabs and moves forward. So now that is a very breakdown kind of motion of Ikkyo Mote. 1, 2, 3, 4. The idea is, can we or should we do it more fluidly together? As in something like 1, 2, 3. So, probably, and even that is slow. I remember we pay a lot of premium in our training of controlling with the hips first, taking a step later. Some schools, as you know, they do those two things at the same time and do the change almost automatically. So it's okay to play with joining the movements as much as possible, as long as we respect the hierarchy of the movements, right? So, for example, the idea of hip and then leg versus the idea of hip and leg together can be a good thing as long as it's the hip what is leading the leg and not the other way around. So the way we do it, we break it down. Hips and then leg. Okay. Now, can I do that in one motion? Sure. As long as it's the hip what is leading the leg and not the other way around. So it's the hip motion what is moving forward and not the other way around. So join the dots as much as you need to join the dots, but do that from a place that knows the hierarchy of the movements. Okay, if the hierarchy of the movements is respected, join them together, no problem. Okay, but if you play around with the hierarchy of the movements, then it's not possibly a good thing. You have to go back into breaking them down and reminding yourselves from the hierarchy of the movements. Now, can we overly do hierarchy without flow? Yeah, that's something that we have to watch out. Yeah, that's true. That is a potential downside of being so stuck in the 1, 2, 3, 4 that we never pass that. We never pass that mindset, and then everything is always chop blocky, and we never actually put it together. That's completely granted. That's an important thing to also watch for. Okay, so in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's about 6 movements or 7 movements in that action. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Because remember, the first 2 movements is not the first movement hierarchically. It's not the cutting. The first movement hierarchically is the entering. In this case, if you should say shomen, which place, shomenuchi, move toward in front of your partner. Then you apply forward. Okay, so those two motions, for example, can we just do them in one action? Sure, as long as the moving forward exists. Okay? If the moving forward doesn't exist and now it's all just catching and cutting, we are breaking the hierarchy of the movement. Okay, so let's finish up with a little bit of kokyu dosa. So breathing in, breathing out, change, breathing in, breathing out. So breathing in, breathing out. You go. You go. You go. You go. San, you go. Hey. So yes, find your stick and practice a lot, your options of transfer, 1, palm, 2, thumb, 3, jump, 1, palm, 2, thumb, 3, jump. Okay, so get yourself very familiar with at least one of those 3 options of transferring, moving from one position to another, because we will need them for our practice. As I say, the jumping one, it's more or less okay on Nikyo, not great to nourish a lot because not great for Sankyo or Jongyo. It's a bit more connection is needed for Sankyo and Jongyo. Okay? So. Ready? Hey, arigato gozaimashita. Just a quick disclaimer, just before we go, just to make sure that I put it in the video. That action of the hand, with the thumb or with the palm or jump, it's not necessarily te sabaki. Okay, so I would say it is a very basic form of te sabaki. The important thing of te sabaki, as Maruno Sensei always reminds us, the same as ude sabaki, ashi sabaki, etc., is that the motion of those parts of the body, hand, legs, hips, etc., are connected to our lower body and center of gravity. So I wouldn't say that motion of the hands even made it to the level of te sabaki. It's just the gesture, the most basic gesture to do the transition from one to the other. It could be described as a te sabaki because it's a movement of the hand, but in ideal terms, it's not in the same way that this is not ashi sabaki in Budo terms, okay? Because it's not connected to the center of gravity. So after you have chosen which hand position to use, remember that for it to be te sabaki, as we understand it, you need to be aware and making participant your center of gravity and your hips in the motion of the hands, okay? So just a little disclaimer. Thank you.